Okay, so let's look at a value investing or contrarian investing case study or example. And this is a real life example from my own life. I actually bought this stock, and we're going to go in good detail on what my thought process was and what I bought it at and what's that now and all that. So you can kind of see the process behind buying this contrarian or value stock. And you can see how it gets to be really subjective in a lot of ways as well. I still own the stock and it's done well for me, but I could sell it any time, so like any stock. So I'm not making any stock recommendations, by the way. I'm just want to use this as an example of a process. This might not be the right stock for you or anything. Heck, like I said, I could sell it any moment. So it's not a stock recommendation. It's really a tool to use to understand value investing a little bit more. Just a quick example. Okay, so let's take a look at the example. This is with Wells Fargo. The ticker is WFC. If you go into quote and put in WFC like in a Yahoo Finance or whatever, it'll be Wells Fargo. And Wells Fargo, if you're not familiar with them, is a large banking institution in the United States. All right, so they're headquartered out of San Francisco, I believe. They used to have a big company called Norwest that was in Minneapolis, and they bought them, and they bought other people all around the way. So they're a big bank company. And I bought them in 2009. So I made an investment in Wells Fargo, individual stock, bought some in 2009, early 2009. So what's going on in 2009? Do we remember what was happening in early 2009? Well, it was the start and really some peak times and bad times of the Great Recession. Globally, it was a great recession, and particularly with the United States and particularly with banks, because they're a big part of it, and banking stocks were way down. But before that even happened, Wells Fargo was always on my radar as far as a stock that I was interested in. I happened to be a customer of Wells Fargo. I've done a lot of research on them. I know what they do well. I know what their strategy is. So from that whole qualitative just standpoint, understanding the company and understanding the industry a little bit, I was like, yeah, Wells Fargo, I'd like to buy them someday. They're a great stock. And I've had stocks like that have been on my radar that I've never bought because they've never really got to the price range that I've been interested in. But Wells Fargo was one that was always high, but it was always in my range. If it ever went down, maybe I'd buy them. Well, what happened was in 2009, the banking stock sector, the entire industry and sector got crushed, just devastated. And because a big cause of that 2009 period was around the banking sector, right? Remember hearing things about really weird derivative investments that banks were making that they didn't even understand themselves, let alone their customers, that were really strange and actually, caused a lot of problems and caused entire companies to fail. So you have these derivative things, and also you had the subprime home mortgage crisis here, particularly in the United States, where people are giving out mortgages or home loans, and Wells Fargo was a big home loan vendor or bank that does lots of home loans that were to really risky people, right? And they weren't doing their due diligence, and people were defaulting and foreclosing, and there was foreclosures in homes. They couldn't pay the homes, and then the whole economy went down, so people were losing their jobs, so they couldn't pay on their home, which means the banks weren't getting paid. And you had the derivative thing, and people hated the banks, and so bank stocks went way, way down. And so I'm like, oh, well, I've had Wells Fargo on the radar. The banks are getting crushed. Everybody's thinking, got to get out of banking stock. So as a value investor or using this strategy, contrarian, I'm thinking, maybe Wells Fargo is being unusually punished versus maybe some other banks who really deserved to go down, and many went bankrupt actually. But Wells Fargo, a long time, 80, 100-year-old company, strong company. So when I looked at it, I knew Wells Fargo and did more additional research. Wells Fargo was a high-quality bank that did a lot of home loans, but the home loans they did were considered high-quality home loans, not subprime. They did some because they did a little because everybody was making a bunch of money before the bottom or the bubble fell, but they were doing high-quality loans to high-quality prospects, and thus they didn't get caught in that big downdraft of subprime mortgages, poor results on the mortgages versus others. They had good high quality mortgages, so they were a lot more solvent than a lot of other banks and doing better. Also, they were a big banking retail banker where they have thousands and thousands of locations across the United States, and so they do business with people who come in and do banking, right? They deposit money, they take money out, they do loans, they do all kind of that retail bank. You go to the bank and you do business. That was what Wells Fargo was known for. And from a strategy standpoint that I understood as a customer and doing more research, And having worked in the retail industry for a while too, understanding the concept of upselling, Wells Fargo was tremendous and great and many accolades around upselling. You go into there to the bank and you make a deposit, well, they would make a suggestion like, oh, I see you don't have our credit card. Would you like a Wells Fargo Visa card? Or, oh, I see you, we have this special on this, home mortgage rate. Would you be interested in that? So they would be making suggestions and selling things inside the bank. And they had really good people who took care of customers and sold stuff. At least my opinion. I've been a long-time customer. Your results with any bank may be different, but that was my experience and what I've been seeing their price appreciate for many years before 2009. Then what also happened right at this time is they bought Wachovia Bank, which had 3,000 locations, a big bank that was frankly poorly run on its retail locations. They were making a ton of money on these subprime mortgages. So when that bottom fell out, they were about to go out of business. Wells Fargo bought them cheap. They got some government assistance even from that, or some special tax breaks that were kind of hidden in there that I found out about and thought, oh, this is pretty good for them. Maybe not great for anybody else, but they bought from some special things because the whole industry was struggling and the U.S. government was trying to prop up the industry. So they got these 3,000 locations on the cheap, and then they could use their expertise to turn them into high-quality Wells Fargo locations. And yeah, whenever there's a merger like that, you close some of the underperforming locations, which is tough for the people in those locations, of course, but it's more profitable for the bank. So I saw all these things and said, yeah, banks are struggling. I'm looking at their fundamentals. The rest of their numbers are good. They're not cutting, their dividend seems okay and all this stuff. I'm going to buy Wells Fargo Bank. And I did. So I bought them for, at the time, $32.50. So what happened? They immediately went down further. They were in this big downdraft. And they went down to $27.50, right? And I'm thinking US dollars. And I'm thinking, gosh, I just lost $5 per share, and depending on how many shares you buy, that's could be quite a bit of money. And like, gosh, I'm buying it, with the idea that they're going to come back, they're a solid bank and a long-term strong performer. Well, currently they're at $46, $50. They kind of trade within that range, and they're still paying their dividend. They're paying, the current dividend yield is at 3.2%, much better than you could get with cash or other, safe investments. I bought it since cheaper. I got a better yield actually because I bought it on the cheap. But right now, I've made some capital appreciation. I'm getting a dividend. It's a stock I've wanted to own, and it's been a long-term good player for me, and it's something I'll buy and hold, hopefully for a very, very long time. But if things change, I could sell it at any time. So the whole point of this story or case study, and because sometimes it doesn't always work out, but here's an example of a case study where, yeah, I looked at the fundamentals, but I also did some financial stuff. But I also used kind of my noggin a little bit to think through things. Do I know this industry? Yeah. Do I know this particular bank? Yeah, I've been a customer for a long time, and I've done additional research too about their strategies and their business practices. I saw where their strengths were not necessarily matching up with what was the problem in other banks. I saw them buy Wachovia really on the cheap. That could be a big boost for them once things turned around, and it did. And they did a great job with it. So I saw all these things coming together, and that's where subjectively I could say with my research and everything saying, yeah, I could buy a bank stock, but this one for me is the best one for me. Now, it doesn't mean there weren't other banks that you could have bought at a better price. Maybe they've outperformed Wells Fargo since then. There's some that have gone even worse or gone out of business. I knew this company, and thus I invested in them, and it's turned out well for me. It doesn't always turn out well, and if it didn't, I would sell it, and maybe sell it at a loss. But I want you to take home with this part is just understand that if you want to be a value investor and kind of buy low and maybe someday sell high, that you can see some of the thought process going through here, and you want to have similar thought processes. I mean, if you're looking at an undervalued stock and you say, oh, I looked at the price, the book is low, and I see this, that looks good, and that's all you got, I would advise you to know more about the company, know more about their strategy, and really articulate to others or to yourself, but even to others, like, here's why I'm doing this. And so when it went down to $27.50, I was articulating that to my wife. She said, boy, that was a bad bet on Wells Fargo. I would say, well, here's the plan. And it turned around within the year, actually, a few months, actually, and was starting to make money right away. So that's what you want to do as well. So no specific recommendation, but here's the thought process behind it. Okay, so we looked at this case study. Let's go ahead and move on to the next lesson.